So can you talk a little bit about Paolo Soleri's influence on you?
The reason I came to Phoenix originally was to work as a summer student in what's called a silk pile workshop of Paolo Soleri. It was 2 credits from ASU. It was tied into their architecture program. And I had become aware of Soleri in 1966 and early 60s as I was studying architecture. And I was intrigued not only by the beautiful sculptural quality of the buildings, I was curious about the story of coming from Wright, of course, and myself coming from Wisconsin with that background where when I was 11 I used to hang out at the construction site of the Greek Orthodox Church by Frank Lloyd Wright. But, it was not only these buildings, and then I was even more enamored by the drawings and the visionary thinking about cities. And so these City on the Mesa, the first studies for Cosanti on the large scale before it got the acronym or the attachment of Arcosanti, which was blending the word architecture with ecology. And so I had the real privilege of being a summer student in the heat of summer, building some of the structures at Cosanti on Doubletree Ranch Road in Scottsdale. And that was a 6-week stint, and I was just really, the ideas were overflowing, the energy of making these things and the invention of Paolo. And then I came back in January of 1968, and I worked for 8 months as an apprentice, actually. So at that time, I not only got to work on the final assemblage of the arcology book, The City in the Image of Man, which would be published by MIT about 2 years later, but I also was working on a city of 2.5 million people. It was a vision called 3D Jersey. It was based on the third jet port for the East Coast between Dulles and JFK. And it was 3/4 of a mile high, and it was this amazing 3-dimensional city. So I got to do some of the studies and drawings conceptually with Paolo, and then finish my 8 months with the last 3 being summer workshop, in which case I was the apprentice superintendent of the students that would come that summer for Silk Pile 8. And how did it affect me? It transformed my life. We would not be sitting in this library today had the Paolo Soleri experience not happened. I mean, that's probably a bit extreme, but not really, because this building exemplifies 2 aspects of Paolo. One aspect is the ability to make the ordinary extraordinary, and that was driven by the modesty and the poverty of his resources and making these amazing structures of earth-sculpted concrete buildings and other things in the desert, where every move we made was so resourceful, so creative, so thoughtful. And that's something I've carried with me all through my career. And the Phoenix Central Library, that was built for less than $100 a square foot back in 1995, exemplified that background, because this building was really reaching beyond with a budget, and every move really emphasized that what can we do with this ordinary thing, ordinary concrete or ordinary copper, grain elevator technology, whatever, as well as very large thinking. And on the other level, that's the large thinking idea, in that my work really focuses very much on a concern about the city and about how we live a more compact, more efficient, more comfortable, and meaningful life in our cities.
Right.
And while the buildings aren't at the extreme reinvention of the city 3-dimensionally, they always are, in respect that buildings are only an assemblage of outside spaces, inside spaces, in the context of making an assemblage, which is a neighborhood, which is a community, which is a city. And so those 2 things I carry and owe very much to Paolo's thinking, his writing, and his own personal example.